Hello and welcome to the Zaffie Show on this cold March day. And we're not going to talk about the weather today because it just wants to stay cold. I hope you will join us. We're happy to be here. I just was talking to the lady here, one of my guests, and I was telling her how when I ate breakfast this morning in front of the TV, Perry, governor of Texas, was speaking. If you saw him, you wouldn't believe it, compared to how he spoke when he was running for president. Oh, he even had me all fired up. Oh, he was a real, you wouldn't believe it. And then there was Christy and on, and I had to leave, but I love listening. I could say a lot more about them, but I'm not going to. Now, I would like to introduce my guest. This is Paul Main. He's running for sheriff of York County. And this is Cheryl Main, Mrs. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
And it's very strange because Cheryl worked with my daughter years ago at school, and Paul knew my brother, Zaffie, when he was a young boy.
Zach was my Little League coach.
Yeah. Small world.
Sure is.
And I met Paul last Sunday at the Democrat caucus.
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
And it's a funny thing because my son, my youngest son, Harry, I said, gee, Harry, I don't know if I should go tomorrow or not to Democrat caucus. He says, go, Mom. You know, you'll never know who you'll see. So I did. And it worked out.
Go.
Oh. Now, you know, I don't know anything about sheriffs or detectives in Maine, so I had to have a little bit of help with this. I'm going to ask you, what brought you to run for sheriff?
Well, I worked there for 19 years, Zaffie, and I genuinely loved the sheriff's department. But you know, I left there and hoped to go into retirement, but it didn't work that way. I worked at Southern Maine Medical Center for 7 years with a dear friend of mine who is a retired lieutenant in the state police, Mike Harriman. And then I said, this is enough, and basically came home. Well, all of a sudden I found myself working a part-time job, and that part-time job then went into a full-time job. And I asked those people, I said, what is it about part-time do you not understand? So I retired. And I have kept very, very close friendships from some of the young folks that I helped to train at the Sheriff's Department. And the situation that now exists at the department, it's gone downhill severely. And the working conditions aren't well, and they've asked me to run again. And I said, okay, I'll do it, because I do believe I can make a difference. My love for the law enforcement life that I led for so many years, and my wife led, people do not understand that you have to do it as a team. That is one of those professions where when the law enforcement spouse leaves home in the morning, you don't know if that person's coming back or not. And it takes a very, very special partner.
I believe that.
Well, excuse me, I'm here to tell you that my wife, Cheryl, was there to support me. In fact, she worked in the clerk of court's office for Superior Court. And you see, I would bring people in, and she would send them away. And with the working situation at the jail, they're down 20-some people, and people are leaving all the time. The working conditions are not good.
Now,
they're ordered to work a lot of overtime hours.
is that the jail in Alfred?
That's correct, yes. These people are being ordered to work overtime shifts. It's impossible for them to have a family life. And, well, when folks work that many hours, in that kind of a profession, stress sets in, fatigue sets in. Decisions aren't probably as good as they could be if the person was fresh. And I have to tell you, those young folks that are doing that are my heroes because they are going above and beyond. They're being taxed to their absolute limit. And the mindset within the command structure of the sheriff's department seems to be that the beatings will stop when the morale improves. And, you know, when the paper came out a couple weeks ago, gentleman made the comment that they were hiring people, hiring good people, training them, and then they leave. Well, if we look at the salary package, it's comparable to any other corrections institute in the state of Maine. So it's not the money. It's the working conditions. And I think I can improve upon those conditions. And the second thing is the credibility of the people who are in charge of patrol, or the administrators. There's a serious lack of credibility there. So with all these things coming into play, what I'm concerned about is that these young folks that are working time and a half, overtime, they're forced to do it. But it's our tax dollars that they're spending. And my concern is that the Department of Corrections funds the jail to a point. After that, it comes from us, the taxpayer. Well, in my association with community leaders, selectmen, and city councilors, I'm finding that a serious chunk of our tax dollar is going to the county. Well, it seems to me that someone ought to be fiscally responsible and spend that tax money wisely. And if we had a leadership in the sheriff's department that was more user-friendly, they have all the credentials that you want to be president, but it takes common sense and it takes an attitude of management by walking around. You talk to the people, find out what their concerns are, and when management makes it a nicer place to work, they won't have all those vacancies because we know what our economic situation is. There are so many people out of work out there. You would think that they'd be having several applicants for each position. They're not. So I think we need to have some change. The tax issue, selectmen, their biggest concern is that, as we know, the governor has really put his foot on the revenue sharing, and the legislature is fighting to regain that as best they can. But these folks are having to go up on people who have property taxes because they have to run a business too. That a town or a city is a business. And I don't feel that it's fair for Biddeford as a city. You have your own police department. Why should they be paying for police services in a sheriff's department? You know, so I want to find alternative methods to funding some of the tax dollars that come from, you know, the taxpayer, because I have to look those folks in the eye and tell them I'm doing the best I can for their concerns. And it doesn't look like it's happening right now, because I see that they're outsourcing all of the food service that comes into that jail. When they built that jail, tax dollars built the jail. There is a state-of-the-art kitchen in that jail, and it's not being used. Essentially, they're bringing meals in from out of the county. They're bringing meals in, and they're just served through the window. Well, first of all, there's a security issue there because every one of those meals should be checked for contraband. All right, and corrections officers are finding more contraband now than they have in years. But the more important issue is that When I was at that sheriff's department, we had a cook, and he kind of, I liken his disposition to that of General George S. Patton. You could hear him all the way down the hallway, but he had trustees that worked for him in the kitchen. And he did a wonderful job. Phil Netto was the cook from right here in Bedford. And even though he was hard on those inmates, he was a disciplinarian. But when they got ready to get to their release date, Phil would hand them a piece of paper with a phone number on it and say, "This is a restaurant that needs kitchen help, and I've already spoken for you, so if you call this number, you'll have a job." Well, that was vocational training in a correction setting before it became the buzzword.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that disturbed me is our tax dollars for the food services now are going outside the county. Well, it seems to me that Bedford has grocery stores, Saco has grocery stores, Sanford has grocery stores. You can't mean to tell me that we can't go to a grocery distributor that can supply the jail at a reasonable cost and support the economy in our community. Hello? I mean, the dollars that we're spending out to go somewhere else aren't helping our citizens. Well, it's the same thing with the medical services. Those are contracted out. And I think very seriously that we've got Maine Health Care. And right now we're seeing Southern Maine Medical Center has merged with Goodall Hospital. And we know that in the medical profession, size means power in terms of buying. So it seems to me that we are remiss if we're not in contact with the biggest health provider in York County for our health services in the jail. And my wife knows, because we've talked about this a lot. She's a wonderful cook. I have to tell you, she's a wonderful cook. But she also agrees that it seems like we should be using the kitchen, because I feel like they're doing us an injustice. We all of us, your taxes, mine, hers, paid for that kitchen. We should be using it. We should be using it. So I guess I see a lot of issues, and that's why I'm running.
Well, I wish you good luck.
Well,
And I never thought of all those things in the jail.
Well, I'm not much of a politician. I've been a career police officer, you know. This is totally foreign to me.
Well, you'll learn. I think you've already learned.
I'm trying.
Okay, and what did you do at the sheriff's department?
What did I do? Well, I did everything, including washing the floor, I guess. I started out as a reserve deputy sheriff. I worked in the jail. They hired me to work in the jail. I worked in the jail there for 2 weeks, and then I went to the patrol division. Well, from the patrol division...
Now, when you say patrol division, that means you went out around.
Yes, I was patrolled in 11 towns.
Wow.
And
things were different, though, then.
They certainly were. We had a very limited budget, and it was difficult because there were very few of us. And, of course, we all had to go to the Criminal Justice Academy. And whenever one went, the other guys had to work to cover. But I can't tell you the times. Mom can speak better about that than I can. I would leave home on a Friday morning, and I probably wouldn't get back home until Tuesday or Wednesday. And it was just the way we had to do things. And I felt that in my towns, I had 11 towns, and I got to know the folks very well. And if they had a call for service come in, I didn't care if I'd been out there 2 straight days. That call for service comes in, I went. Because it's very, very tacky for a police officer to just call, well, what did you want? They're calling for a police officer. They'd like to see a uniformed police officer. They asked for it, and they deserve it. That is what taxes are for. And I've always been very strong about that, that if I had a call that come in 5 minutes before I got off shift, I took it. And if I ended up with a case that took 2 days, well, so be it. But that's the
Now,
way we
did you
had to do it.
carry a gun?
Oh, yes. Yes, we were
I don't know, so.
all certified law enforcement officers, absolutely. And
Do you
so,
ever have to shoot it?
no.
Good.
Well, I was a part of the communities that I patrolled. And as I taught both at the Criminal Justice Academy as well as within our department, that if a young fellow or gal wants to be successful as a police officer, they've got to understand that they've got to be a part of that community. Their children are going to go to the same schools, they're going to go to the same barbers, they're going to go to the same church, they're going to go to the same grocery store, and if you want to be a brat, expect a hard life. But if you want to live with folks, your mere presence, the presence of a police officer on the side of the road. How many times you go down the turnpike, you see a police car, and automatically brake lights come on? Well, the issue there is voluntary compliance. And like I've told those young fellas, just being seen means a lot to the taxpayer. And it serves a purpose. But anyway, to get back, I was in patrol division for quite some time, and then I started the detective division. And while I was basically initiating the detective division, I was also in charge of the reserve division. And I had 28 reserve deputy sheriffs that were able to fill a shift at the jail or in police services on patrol. And early on, when I went to the road, I found a major issue with elderly people and children that were walking away from home and getting lost. So I started a division within the Sheriff's Department called the Tactical Search Team. And I attended the National Search and Rescue Academy and later instructed there.
Now, where are these academies?
Well, the main Criminal Justice Academy used to be in Waterville, okay? And the National Search and Rescue Academy was at an old Army base off the tip of Manhattan, a place called Governor's Island. And that is, the National Search and Rescue Academy is jointly overseen by the United States Coast Guard, #1, and the United States Air Force, #2. So
That's interesting.
I had all of our people go through that academy, and I later instructed there. Because I can't tell you the times that we would go to a search, and it was like helter-skelter. Nobody knew what was going on. And I thought there has to be a better way. So we joined forces with the Maine Warden Service, and we established a service here in York County that paid great dividends. I can think of a gentleman who had memory loss. He was diabetic, and he walked away from home and didn't come back. And when we found the man, he was in diabetic shock. And I can tell you of several instances where we've saved lives. And this team was also trained to do what we call criminal searches. That is to go over an area where a crime happened and search for evidence. And they were trained in the evidentiary procedures and all that kind of stuff. But basically, we were pretty stretched because I had the detective division, the search team, and the reserve division. And it really helped. And the sheriff then was Sheriff Clinton Wesley Finney. And the sheriff was extremely pleased because we were able to provide backup for patrol for the jail that didn't harm the budget. These reserve people were not being paid overtime to come in and fill a shift. So it saved the budget, and we maintained a level underneath what the maximum was, so that we weren't overspending.
It's good.
Well, that to me is what public service is about.
You wouldn't think it today.
Well, I guess you're right on that one.
Now, Cheryl, how do you feel about Paul going back to the sheriff's department?
Well, at first I was saying, oh, geez, that's such a mess over there from what we've heard. You really don't need all that. And eventually I came around to realizing that this person can make a difference because he cares about people. He learned that from Sheriff Finney when he worked over there. It was more like a family thing. It was people cared about people, and I know that he feels that way about people. And I think he can be a big help to them over there.
Good. Good. Can he make a difference? You just answered that.
Yes, I think he can. I really think he can.
That's good.
Well, that's my girl, and she knows where my heart's been for years, and I mean, no one knows you better than your wife.
True.
And my girl knows what's in my heart, and she always has. And I, at this point in time, I guess I'm willing to do it one more time.
That's what counts. If you want to do it.
Well,
It comes from here.
those of us,
Be good.
Right.
Can't help but be good.
I look at things that are penny wise and dollar stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And a person can have so many qualifications, they can have more degrees than a compass. But if they don't have the common sense to apply it,
Mm-hmm.
then where are we? And I'm sorry, but when I see or hear the kids talk to me, the young folks that work there, when I hear them say that somebody's inside the jail handing out political literature, it tells me that the administration is more concerned with their political future than they are the safety issues involved with those folks that work in the jail. Because you see, the jail, what people don't understand is those corrections officers that work at that jail, they are policemen in their own city. They have a little city in that jail. They have to patrol the streets, the corridors, and they have to patrol the neighborhoods, the different blocks, and they have to maintain order. And I had a young man tell me a couple of weeks ago that a young corrections officer, a female, was in one of the blocks when a physical altercation broke out between two inmates.
In that block?
In that block, she called for assistance, and a major in the block, his comment was, "They've got it," and he turned around and walked off.
Oh.
Now that is not setting an example by leadership. That is not setting an example. And I'm sorry, but I care about those folks. And they're constantly, the corrections people, they don't have any upward mobility. They're being told all the time, you're a corrections officer, you're not a deputy sheriff. Well, I am an example of someone who went in and I was promoted on my initiative and my accomplishment. And I firmly believe that that opportunity should still exist. And that alone would probably make the York County Sheriff's Department one of the best places in the state of Maine to work. And that is my goal. I want the York County Sheriff's Department to be the best department in the state of Maine to work for. And that's what I'm shooting for.
Now, I've never been in that building. I've ridden by it.
I'm glad you've not been in it.
Is it like you see people in a block or?
Well, they have blocks, they have day rooms, and you know, like a common, and then they have their own individual cells.
Now, do
And
they stay in that cell? Maybe it depends on why they're in there. Do they have to stay in that cell all the time? Do they get
oh no,
out?
oh no! In the daytime, they're out in the blocks,
And the
and
block
they're
is
out. They're out in the commons.
that's
And
where you can see the
here's my
sunshine?
yes,
Okay.
but my
I
feeling is
know these.
yes.
Probably you don't
Well,
know
my
these.
feeling is that I do not want to let any inmate set in that jail. If they want to help themselves, I want to provide the vehicle. One of the sad facts is that the county jails in the state of Maine provide 70% of all the mental health services delivered in the state of Maine.
Oh my.
Exactly. Well, unfortunately, mental health services have been cut and cut and cut. And there's an issue currently going on with Riverview.
Now, how can the person that's guarding them, shall we say, deal with with what's wrong with them?
Well, here's the issue. First of all, we have to go back and we have to understand the reason why that person suffering from mental illness is in a county jail. They've made a wrong decision, which ultimately ends up in a violation of a law, and they end up in jail. Well, were they receiving services? Were they receiving the proper medications that they were supposed to have? Were they receiving the counseling that they have to have? Probably not. So, with our society the way it is in the state of Maine now, well, the place that we put them is the county jail. Well, I submit that that is not the place to put them, because mentally ill people inside of a county jail, we know that they're victimized. They become traumatized. It makes the experience so much worse.
Probably makes them worse.
Exactly, exactly. And I think, well, I've already pledged my support to NAMI, National Institute for Mental Illness. We have a very active chapter here in the state of Maine. And what we need to do is we need to look at this and find some alternative solutions, because services are not being delivered. And when they have to be delivered at a county jail, it is a very sad testimony to our society. But at the same time, I'm concerned about those people at the county jail that have no job skills, and no high school diploma, and the recidivism rate is terrible. What we've got to do, and I have found avenues through the private sector that are willing to provide vocational training without cost to the county. Without cost, no tax dollars involved. They will help to train people for welding, light assembly, and if they can show that they're proficient, when they're released from jail, they'll be offered a job. Now, I think that we have to understand that people without a degree or a diploma and people who don't have job skills, they're unarmed in the employment market. They have nothing to work with. So it seems to me that if we want to save tax dollars, and industries want to help train people so that they can have some people with the basic talents and qualifications to be there, we ought to make that merger. We ought to make that merger because A, it gets this guy or gal into an employment situation where they're making money so they don't have to steal or do whatever they did that got them in jail, and they become a tax-paying member of society. Well, that's, to me, is common sense. And it doesn't take 15 degrees and all this kind of thing to figure that out. I mean, being a sheriff, it's involved, but I think it's more than just give me the facts. It's about helping your community. And the Sheriff's Department, we've got 26 counties in York County. And,
Do people visit these people in jail?
well, that's another issue that is not good. Because there are so many people out on so many openings. The jail staff is very small and very limited, and sometimes they just can't get all the visitors to see the prisoners because they don't have enough corrections officers there to do it. And I can't tell you
Enough
how many
help.
attorneys that I've heard from that say, boy, I hope you can do better for us because we can't talk to our clients at the county jail. Now, what's wrong with this picture? The last I knew, this country was of the people, by the people, and for the people.
We got to
Well,
get it back there.
I don't see where there's any for the people when a lawyer cannot talk to his client. It just doesn't make sense to me. So yeah, that's
We got a
how
lot of problems.
Well, that and the whole thing is, to me, is being responsible to the public, but at the same time maintaining credibility with the people that work there and develop an environment that people want to come to work there.
Wow, that's going to be a hard job,
Well,
even when everything's good.
I think a little kindness goes a long ways.
What are the issues associated with call sharing? What's call
Oh.
sharing?
Call sharing. This is an agreement between the Maine State Police and the York County Sheriff's Department. And have I heard about this? Whoa, from almost everybody that's ever asked for police services. What happens is the state police patrol 5 towns in the county. All right? And there are 14 towns that the Sheriff's Department covers. Well, here's what the rub is. Folks call up and say, I need a police officer. Well, I'm sorry, you've called the Sheriff's Department. The state police are handling that town. You'll have to call them. Well, now that makes the person
Now,
have to make...
what happens, though? What if they need the police officer that minute?
There you are.
Right.
That's the issue. And I'm saying that I've already talked with the lieutenant who's the commander of the Troop A barracks. And we've had a long discussion, and we realized that rural law enforcement in York County is broken. And the way we fix this is I want to sit down with that lieutenant, his supervisors, and mine. I'd like to sit down with him. Throw this thing out the window about them doing 5 towns. What I want to see is I want to see the patrol schedules for both departments integrated. When someone calls for a police officer, they don't care what color uniform he has on. They just want a police officer, and they certainly don't want to be told, well, you've called the wrong police agency, you've got to call... No. That's foolishness. So my concern is that we sit down and we're all going to enforce the law and provide police services at the level that should be done. I can't understand. I've never been in that situation, but I just cannot understand the frustration of someone who says, you know, I called the Sheriff's Department and I had people with ATVs on my land and they were tearing down fences and my cattle were getting out.
Oh, my goodness.
And they told me I had to call the state police. Well, yeah, by the time everything gets routed and they make a second call and it's a waste of time. And it makes more sense to me that the closest person to that call responds to it.
Well, I can tell you a story that happened to me.
Sure.
Let's see, my car's about 13 years old, and I had just gotten it, and I was out at night, the first night, and I didn't know how the lights worked. And I couldn't get the light to work because it had been in the garage, and the garage man had, new cars. It's not new now, but then had done something so that and he didn't put it back the way he was supposed to, so the light wouldn't go on. So a policeman stopped me. It was a foggy night, and he realized I didn't know how to put the lights on. So he thought he got me all straightened out. Well, he didn't. So I went slowly, slowly, slowly down Route 1, and I turned the corner at Thornton Academy. I don't know where these policemen came from. One in front of me, one beside me, one in back of me, one over here. Well, what would you think? Where did they come from? Just like mosquitoes, butterflies.
Well, that's a luxury that inner city police departments have. They have a smaller area to patrol. So I'm sure they were concerned because here's a car traveling at night with no lights on, and they were concerned for your safety, and that's why probably you had one in front and in back.
Oh, I had them all around me. And they offered to get me home.
Sure.
But I said, no, I don't want the police, my neighbors to see the police bringing me home.
Oh, gee.
I did get home, and I took my car to the garage the next day, and they did what they were supposed to do.
Sure.
But I'm not good with a new car.
I can understand. Those things happen, and
I'll never
again,
forget it.
my concern is that the closest policeman takes the call. You know,
But
I can understand 20 years ago, this county started to see a tremendous growth in it started back then. And I can understand why back when the growth issues were going on, the state police and the sheriff's department were basically into the numbers in the phone calls to justify their existence. We've gone past that for a long time. It doesn't make a difference which agency handles the call. Let's get the services to the public as quickly as possible. That's I'm sorry.
Could save a
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And I know that when I was on patrol out there, most of my backup was state police because I had 11 rural towns, and up in Parsonsfield, if I was up there, we had what we call a fixed hearing on radio. If I heard a state police officer going to a call and I had any knowledge about the place being violent or something, you know, one of these kinds of things, I would automatically start drifting that way. And the state police did the same thing with me. And we had a working relationship that was second to none in the entire state of Maine. In fact, we were a model for other departments and other agencies with the state police in the state of Maine, because the sheriff then and the lieutenant at the Troop A barracks, they were concerned about numbers. And I think that Sergeant Archibald Howe said it the best. It may be a brown uniform or it may be a blue uniform, but the blood is red in both of them. So we need to be there for each other. And I have to tell you that I want to see that happen again, because over the course of time, the reduction of towns, it's affected the roles of the state police. We don't have the troopers here that we used to have.
And more population.
And more population. So I'm wondering, in this whole scheme, I mean, I have to look at things in terms of reality. I'm wondering how long the tax bills are going to support police services. We've got to find alternative means. And currently we have some contract deputies that are that patrol one particular town, or in one case a couple of towns. But we have to understand that tax dollars can only go so far, and we have got to find some alternative issues.
They don't go very far now.
Well, you know, I'm looking at what's going on. And I don't care what the guy's smiley attitude is, like the talk show host, you're our grand prize winner. We're losing this game. We've got to start looking at alternative means of funding the sheriff's department. And the taxpayer just can't keep taking the hits. I know our taxes are going up probably $200 next year.
Ours did already.
Well,
More than that.
and as I've heard from the selectmen and city councilors, hey, we have to have answers for the public when they're asking us, why are our taxes going up?
Well, when they mandate things that aren't sensible,
Well,
there's money thrown away.
well, I tend to agree with you. But you have to understand that we have to provide a service. There's no question about that.
Oh, I agree with
But-
that. I didn't mean that.
But what I'm saying is that in terms of the tax dollar, okay, I'll give you an example of, it was a sheriff's department employee that lived in Portland. And he moved to Saco. He used a department truck to move. Now, to me, that is theft of services. This vehicle was meant to serve the public, not personal use. And it's these kind of things that people see that frustrate them. And understandably so. I know it frustrates me. And I just don't believe that that kind of thing should be happening. And I want to be the one that is accountable to the public, because I've really thought about this. And the budget process that goes on between labor, the commissioners, and the sheriff's department, I don't think that needs to be an adversarial situation. I think if we sat down at the same table with some realistic goals and objectives here, I understand the commissioners. I understand that they are responsible. But when you letting people use county vehicles for personal use, how can you say that's a wise use of tax dollars? I don't think it is.
No, what if everybody did it?
Exactly. Well, then what we have here is double standards. And that's one of the things that both at the Maine Criminal Justice Academy and at the Sheriff's Department that I said to the young folks that were aspiring to be police officers that were in our program. I would tell them, the 35-mile-an-hour speed limit applies to you in a police car just as much as it applies to John Citizen. And I don't want to see you driving over 35 if that's what the speed limit is, because if you don't set an example, who's going to?
I know someone who had to learn that. More than once.
Well, it's really funny
And
because
it wasn't my fault. I just could not help it. It just went down my foot.
oh, Leadfoot Sally. Uh-huh.
Good now. It's too expensive.
I'll tell you something
Right.
really funny. I went in last summer, I went in to have my license renewed. And the lady at the motor vehicle registry looked at me, kept looking at me. And finally, when she started to take my picture, she said, I remember you.
Uh-oh.
You stopped me. We moved up from Massachusetts, and we lived in Newfield, and you stopped me. And I said, I did? She said, yes, I was on my way home from school. I was going to Massabesic High School. She said, and you stopped me. I said, well, can you remember the reason why I stopped? She said, oh, yes, I was going about 50 in a 35 zone. And I said, well, I guess maybe. I said, that happened quite a few times. She said, but you were so sweet about it. She said, you told me that the first time was a warning. And what I did with the high school kids is I'll give you an incident, because you can make a difference in your community as a policeman. I stopped a young lad one day that was high school age in a vehicle, and he was going 10 miles or so over the speed limit, and I gave him a warning. And I said to him, I said, young man, this time you get a warning. Next time, if I have to stop you again, it's going to go a little bit harder on you. Well, a couple of months later, I stopped him again. About the same, about 10 over. I said, well, I said, now, what I think we have to do with this one, I said, we've discussed that the next time it would be a little bit more involved. I says, I think I'm going to call Dad.
Uh-oh.
Well, his dad is an attorney,
Oh.
and a very, very fine attorney. So I called the attorney, and I told him what had happened. That night after I got home, I got a phone call. And the attorney told me, he says, my son's license has been suspended for 30 days.
Oh.
I said, how did that happen? I didn't write a ticket. And he says, Dad suspended it.
Well, you know, that's good.
Well,
Yes,
that
it
young
is.
man is now a captain in the United States Army.
Is he?
And I am so proud of those kids and what they did. You know, every kid's going to grow up.
Mm-hmm.
And the impression that we leave on that child is important. And I always treated every high school kid exactly the same. I gave them a fair shake, and the second time it was with Dad, and the third time it went to court. So when I went to court with something, the judges knew, this guy's, you know, if he brings this guy to court, this has got to be something. So that's the way it worked with me, you know. We all have our professional judgment things that we use on the road, and I just wish there was a little more professional judgment being used in the administration of the Sheriff's Department.
Well, maybe if you get in there.
Well,
And you know what? It depends on those people that are sheriffs, too.
well, yes, and believe me, our house has been a second home to more people from the Sheriff's Department than you know. And we do hear about the working conditions. We hear about the issues, and there are several. And some of the kids, they tell Mom, we're hanging on till he gets there, and if he don't make it, we're gone. That's terrible. They shouldn't have to work that way. And, I mean, I can tell you horror stories of people who have been interrogated for 3 or 4 hours and forced to sign letters of resignation when they did absolutely nothing wrong. I can tell you about one young man that faced criminal charges, all of which were subsequently dismissed, and he's not working at the county anymore. Well, now, that is no way to run a ship. I'm sorry, but that's bad as far as I'm concerned. But I've always...
Life isn't easy, is it?
Hmm?
Life isn't easy.
Well, I'll tell you that I believe that fairness, compassion, and kindness go a long way. And I just believe that you have the duty as an administrator, as a sheriff, to be a role model for the folks that are there. You have to command respect. And I've always felt that respect begets respect. So I think there needs to be a totally different approach to what's going on there. And fortunately, I have my wife to thank for helping me to be more understanding as years go on, and she's a very, very smart lady.
Good. Cheryl,
Yes,
do you feel that the Sheriff's Department is in need of change?
obviously. From all that I've learned, yes, very much so.
Why do you feel Paul wants to return as sheriff? I think we know the answer.
He loves the sheriff's department, and he wants to see it return to what it used to be. He wants to make it a better place for people to work. Um, Basically, that's about it, I think.
It's good enough.
And I think he can do a really nice job.
Do you think, do you ever think someone was put in jail that really shouldn't have been?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. In fact, there was a young lady from Wells that was in the jail for, I guess, a month. I don't know the exact number of days. A month longer than she should have been in jail. She was kept there.
What,
And
was it a mistake?
absolutely. Absolutely. And again, we're coming back to a situation just like a while ago, there was a fellow that died at the jail. Okay, well, things happen. It's beyond our control. But when you have so very few people working there and they are stretched so thin, I hearken back to fatigue and stress. Okay, they're not
Both
able to
bad.
make good decisions, and they shouldn't have to be worried about what's behind them, looking to write them up if they're not. They have to worry about both edges of the sword, and that's wrong. That's wrong. There should be an atmosphere that enhances learning and dedication, and it's not there now. That atmosphere is definitely not there.
Now, our time is almost up,
Well, there.
and they sleep right there in the jail,
Who does?
the prisoners.
Oh, yeah, the inmates. Yes, yes, they're all, yes, they're kept right there. Except if they go out for work programs, which is another thing that I want to do. Not chain gangs, but in the old days, we used to take these inmates out in vans and let them clean up trash in different towns alongside the roads and bundle it all up and bag it up and that kind of thing. And as well as that, I've been in Maine for a lot of years. And I know how to operate an International Harvester tractor. And when the time and the season comes, I'm the first one to tell you that I'll plow up a couple of acres of land, and those inmates will be planting their own vegetables.
That's good.
Because for years, I saw a co-op vegetable stand on county property. And I always thought that should be inmates selling vegetables that were raised on county tax dollar so that they bring money into the county and it helps to feed the people in the kitchen.
It keeps them busy.
And how much good does it do for that person to see the fruits of labor when they plant a seed and they come back and they work it, they nurture it, and they pick a tomato? I grew this, a sense of accomplishment. There again, it's work
Well,
skills.
Our time is up. It's been a pleasure. I've learned a lot. You gave me some things to think about that I really didn't think very much about, except not speeding. And it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And
It's
I'll
been a
tell
pleasure.
Ann.
Okay, yes, you do that. She's a sweetheart.
And thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
It's been a pleasure. Enjoy each other. And don't work day and night, day and night. Go home.
Well, I'm not going to be out there chasing cars up and down the street anymore, but the young fellows and gals that are, they're going to know they have my support, and the folks that work in the jail, they're going to want to come to work.
Good. That's important.
And the taxpayers are going to start seeing the money applied in the right places and not wasting money.
That's important too. Very.
It is to me because we
this-
pay taxes.
This day and age too. Everything's out of control. Well, thank you very much. Is there anything else you want to say?
I just want to thank you for having the opportunity to
been a
be on
pleasure.
here, and it was so funny
I
that
know.
when you told me about your brother and
I-
his being my first Little League coach, and he was a tremendous mentor, and I followed in his steps, you know, because I've coached baseball at Massapequa High School, and I had a college team, a summer program for college boys, and I enjoyed it so much. And it was Zach that planted that seed because he was so wonderful
Oh, he
with
loved
kids.
it. He loved it.
Well, I
When he said, do you know, do you know Zach Kedulary in Kittery? I almost fainted. I said, it's my brother, and we just met.
Isn't that something?
well, what Zach did for me, I will cherish forever
Have to do
because
for somebody else.
he was a wonderful guy and a wonderful coach, and he knew how to make young people feel at ease.
Good. That's
So
good.
I was very fortunate to have the influence of Zacharias Cadulary in my life, and to find out that you were his sister. Well, it's a small world.
Well, you know, Judy, that's his wife, said, I'd like to see that. And I said, you know what? You'll get a DVD.
Oh, wonderful.
So if you want to say something to Zachy,
I'd love to. A personal message for me to you, Zach. I want to thank you for having the patience and the courage to put up with a brat like me and help me to play baseball and help me to become a better citizen in my community. You had a positive influence on my life, and I can tell you right now, I will remember you until my last breath. You are a good man, to quote Othello.
thank you. I'll say thank you for him. He'll get that.
Good.
I'll be sure.
I hope so.
Well, folks, we've come to the end of this program. I enjoyed it. I learned to think about some things I didn't think about inside the jail. They don't have to tell me not to speed because I stopped that. I couldn't help it. It was just my foot would go, and I was always in a hurry, but I learned not to be. About time. Thank you for listening. I hope you stay warm, don't slip and fall, and spring is right around the corner. Onward to spring. Thank you for listening. Love, Zaffie.